Okay, this video is called How to Read a Natal Chart 1D, and 1 because it's about the first house, and D because it's the fourth video in the series. So it's going to be another Virgo rising chart, and I want to look at it to see if we can read some information in it, as well as can we use it as an example of how we can make sure the birth time is right, or at least close. So the person whose chart I want to look at has 11 Virgo rising. At least he was given a particular birth time, and the chart he's been working with is 11 Virgo rising, with Mercury in the first house at 12 Virgo retrograde. And because 11 Virgo is the Capricorn declinate, we need to consider Saturn down here at 8 Sagittarius. So we're told that the birth time was just after 6 a.m. and maybe it was, but it could have been a bit before 6, you know, and nobody really noticed the time until the baby was born. And so it could be that being born a few minutes, a few minutes earlier could put, for instance, 9 Virgo in the Ascendant. Or if he was born like at 10 past 6, it could put, let's say, 13 Virgo rising, and that would put Mercury still in 12 degrees in the 12th house. So we've got a few different things to look at, but we're going to begin with 11 Virgo, Mercury in the first at 12 Virgo retrograde, and Saturn down here at 8 Sagittarius. So I know that this example here with, let's say, 13 Virgo rising and Mercury at 12. I know a number of people make use of the idea that a planet near the end of a house, they read it as if it's in the next house. So they wouldn't care that Mercury was technically in the 12th, because they would read it in the first. But I think I want to avoid arguments or debate for the moment about how close is close enough. And just take the actual cusp from the table of houses as being important and marking the beginning and end of a house. And if Mercury's on this side of the line, he's in the 12th. If Mercury is here on this side of the line, he's in the first. So, okay, let's say 11 Virgo rising. If we're looking for a significator of the native, because the first is a house of self, then with Virgo rising, we certainly have Mercury ruling Virgo, and it's at 12 degrees of Virgo. And maybe later we're going to look and find it's a Capricorn declinate, so we look at Saturn as well. But with Mercury in the first and ruling the Ascendant, the ruler of the first is in the first. This person is self-contained. One house, the ruler is in the same house. It's like the energy is bundled up within that area. It doesn't go to another area of life. And so he's self-contained, and also he's hard to know, partly because it's Virgo and they're kind of retiring people anyway, but also because Mercury is retrograde. So it's like the energy is cut in half when a planet's retrograde. And so it works, one way of describing it is, it works half on the outer plane and half on the inner plane. And when you've got people with, let's say, 4 or 5 retrograde planets, they're difficult to know, because so much of what's happening with them is going on invisibly, we could say. So we've got a self-contained individual who is difficult to know, who's hard to know. And maybe I'm saying he's self-contained, maybe he's self-absorbed as well, although maybe that comes with Scorpio rising rather than Virgo rising. So if we look in Vivian Robson's Beginner's Guide for a few words to know what we should make of Virgo, Mercury and Virgo, he gives Mercury and Virgo as critical, and I think that's going to be familiar to everyone, skeptical, and third word is practical. Okay, and we sort of, I think we're familiar with these words relating to Virgo. And so I know this person, and I think it's a good description of him. The thing is, some may think this isn't not saying that much, but he could be many other things. He could be introspective, but he's not. He could be philosophical, but he's not. He could be artistic and creative, but is not. And because Mercury is in the house of self, practical, critical, and skeptical describe him. I'll call him Bill, even though his name is William. So Bill is practical within himself. So this Mercury in Virgo, because it's here and not over here or here or here, is describing the native himself. And we have Gemini, Virgo here. If you could see the whole chart, you might notice Gemini up here in the midheaven. So the same planet that represents Bill himself also represents his business. Mercury ruling Gemini as well as ruling Virgo. And so his personal practicality, we could say, from Mercury being in Virgo, will also express itself in business. And if we stop for a minute and think, so the ruler of the 10th, or the ruler of Gemini midheaven is Mercury in Virgo. And if we stop for a moment and think, what kinds of occupations or what kinds of things does Virgo rule? We're not going to be surprised that Bill works with databases. And he actually worked for a long time in the circulation department for various magazines. He didn't write the articles, but he organized the distribution of the magazines. Gemini midheaven, Mercury in Virgo. And so Robson tells us as well that with Mercury in the first house, it makes a person restless, and that's fair enough, but it also gives business ability. And I suppose we can see that Mercury being a general significator of business, and having it in the house of self, you're good at business. And it's interesting, I think, because Bill is not just involved with circulation, he's now the circulation manager for a large publishing company. How did he get to be manager? Partly because Gemini midheaven, ruled by Mercury in the first, giving good business ability. And even when he wasn't the manager, he worked in other companies. When the manager of the department was off sick or on leave or maternity leave or whatever it happened to be, he would take over. And he showed early on that he was capable of managing a department and not just working there. Why? Mercury in the first, ruling the midheaven. And I think you're going to find a lot of examples of Virgo rising in Gemini on the midheaven. And this, I hope you can see this, John F. Kennedy Jr., 11 Virgo rising, Gemini midheaven. And his claim to fame partly was being John Kennedy's son, but also he got a law degree eventually, passed the New York bar exams, but at the time of his death he was the editor, managing director, the publisher of a political magazine called George. Gemini midheaven, magazines. Another example to give you, this is Mozart. Great genius Mozart, 12 Virgo rising, 7 degrees of Gemini in the midheaven. He wasn't a writer, or he wasn't involved with magazines, and you may think of him mainly as a composer, but he also wrote the lyrics for operas. And so words were involved with Mozart's business and not just music. So there's a couple of examples of people, famous people with Virgo rising in a Gemini midheaven.